I am so excited right now. Yesterday, Lori sent me a link to this podcast called Legal AF, Legal as F, right? And I click on it, and it's this incredible woman aboard a train, and she's giving all these details and this analysis of the Trump trial. And I couldn't look away, despite the fact that there were some audio issues because she's on a train, right? But wow, I was so impressed, and I thought I need to have her on the Mark Thompson show. And so I'm really excited to welcome to the show Karen Friedman Agnifilo, and I hope I said your name right. Thank you so much for being here on the Mark Thompson show.
Thanks for having me. It's Karen Friedman Agnifilo.
Agnifilo. So Karen, you're the former number 2 at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office.
Yeah.
You're the former acting DA. You host the Legal as F podcast, and you have been attending the Trump trial, if I'm correct.
Well, yeah, sort of. I haven't actually gone to court yet, but I am covering it by reading the transcripts and reading the people who are in the courtroom are sending out. Are sending things out as they are sitting there, right? The reporters, and there's some people on Twitter, et cetera. So, but because I've tried many cases in that courtroom, and I know the judge and I know the prosecutors, I can kind of give a perspective and interpret things in a way that is very close to home and near and dear to my heart.
Let's start by kind of rolling it back to opening statements, because I thought that this was an interesting kind of counterpoint where the opening arguments with prosecutors painting as part of an illegal scheme influencing an election, right? And then the defense comes out and says influencing an election, that's just called democracy. So what I was hoping you could touch on is how influencing an election plays into this, as far as the election goes, and also conspiracy and cooking the books and how that all ties together.
Yeah, you're allowed to influence an election by, say, going out and debating arguments, and by putting advertising out that is for an opinion or not, or giving speeches or donating, right, to a particular candidate. I mean, clearly you're allowed to try to influence an election that is part of our democracy. But what you're not allowed to do is to corruptly influence an election. There are laws, like there are federal election laws, there are state election laws, and you're not allowed to do things that are outside the rules. It's like the difference would be you can walk in a bank and take out money with your debit card. That's legal. But if you walk into that same bank and take out money with a gun, that's illegal. And that's saying, oh, but it's a bank, I took out money. It's just a simple way of kind of illustrating how the difference between what they're arguing is, right? One side is saying, oh, this is just normal election influence, right? This is what people do. We suppress negative stories about the candidate, and we amplify positive stories, and whatever that's kind of how they do it in the campaign. But what the Manhattan DA's office is saying, this was a criminal conspiracy to unlawfully influence the election against the law. They broke the law, and they did it by first making an agreement among it's like a conspiracy. The law defines it as an agreement between 2 or more people to essentially break a law together. And so they're saying that happened between David Pecker, who was the first witness. He's the head of AMI that owned the National Enquirer. He was good friends with Trump. And it was between him, Trump, and Michael Cohen, who all decided to work together to do this. And they came up with a scheme. And the scheme was going to be this catch and kill scheme, where they were going to go out and buy stories off women who, in particular, who were going to claim things about Donald Trump and suppress them. David Pecker was talking about how some of the stories, one of them in particular, that he thought that Donald Trump, a doorman came forward and said Donald Trump had a love child that turned out to be false and was completely debunked. And that particular story, David Pecker said, yeah, we bought that story. If that had turned out to be true, we would have aired that after the election. And that really highlighted these stories were all about the election. They were not about protecting Melania, which is
Mhm.
one of the defense arguments, which is we weren't trying to influence the election. This was just a way to protect his family. Um, and so that's clearly not going to be the case, because I think witness after witness is going to show that this is about the election. And the reason that's significant is if it is about the election, David Pecker and anyone else who gives these donations, these in-kind donations, he gave money, actual
Mhm.
money, to catch and kill these stories, to the doorman, to Karen McDougal, who Donald Trump had a year-long affair with, and to Stormy Daniels, who he had a one-night stand with. He gave actual money, was actually given, and
Mhm.
that would have required registering that with the election. But they decided not to do that because Donald Trump didn't want this coming out. And so they came up with, at least with Stormy Daniels, they came up with this scheme that they were going to cook the books and hide it as a legal fee, as opposed to an in-kind campaign donation, which is really what it was. And that's what made it criminal. Is you can't falsify business records in New York, and if you do it to cover up or commit a crime, it bumps it up to a felony. So he's charged with those felonies.
So if they had just listed it as what it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, well, it's sort of. There are limits. There are
Yeah.
campaign limits, and so I'm not sure that this would have met those limits.
No.
But yes, typically, if Donald Trump had just paid Stormy Daniels and paid it with his own personal money as
Mhm.
hush money, I don't think we'd be here. That is correct.
Legal fees. That's something I would pay my attorney. In this case, you. I might say, hey, I'll give you, or you might say, here's what I charge per hour, and I give that money to you. It's not money that then you turn around and pay someone else to keep quiet about all the bad stuff I've done. That's not a legal fee.
No, that's
No.
not a legal fee. Look, lawyers can do that. Lawyers will sometimes, if you're settling a case, lawyers will take the money and do that. But no, it is
Yeah.
but it's recorded in such a way, right?
Right.
It's not doubled so that the lawyer then can take it as income tax, take it as income and then pay half to taxes and keep the other half and then reimburse. That's what they did here. They were trying to conceal this and make it look like income for Michael Cohen, when because they really didn't want this coming out. And that's what it means to illegally or corruptly influence an election.
I heard you say yesterday that Trump is known to micromanage. You so that all the things that I guess they're talking about in court, where he didn't know what the money was going to, he had no idea, don't make sense insofar as who he's known to be. That he wouldn't know that the hush money was paid really isn't a plausible argument because he knows where all the money's going.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's what David Pecker was saying, was that he's a micromanager. That's what came out on Direct. And this is somebody who knew Donald Trump for a very long time. They were very close friends. They knew each other for decades. And they were so close that it was a symbiotic relationship. Obviously, Donald Trump was feeding him ratings of The Apprentice show and other information that was getting magazines sold because there were headlines that he wanted. And so it's not like Pecker wasn't getting stuff out of it too. But David Pecker, as a result, says, look, he was a micromanager. People would bring in something into him. He would know where every dollar, every detail was. So the idea that he didn't know that this was happening is just flies in the face of any credulity.
Yeah, no. Um, can we talk gag order? Because he's not supposed to, Trump, say anything about potential witnesses in the case, even though he knows Michael Cohen will likely be a potential witness, right? And yet here he is on the courthouse steps. And what's the judge going to do? Because a fine doesn't seem sufficient, and it's probably not going to stop him from talking. And can you put a former president in jail for contempt of court? How does a judge handle this?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's just really he reminds me of a toddler who, you say to the toddler, you cannot come out of your room, and the toddler walks right up to the door and puts his foot, right
Right.
there, and then starts to like move his foot a little forward, and his toe comes out, and he's like, staring at you like, what are
While
you
they're
going to do
looking at
about it?
you. That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly. They're staring at you like, what are you
Yeah.
going to do about it?
Right.
That's what Donald Trump is doing to the court, and the court is going to have to really assert itself and show that you can't do that. You can't. You really can't do that. So any minute, even right now, as we're doing this, the decision on the gag order could come down. He's going to issue that at some point, any minute. Could be today, could be tomorrow. And Donald Trump keeps violating it. So I think there's no doubt he's going to be held in contempt in some way. What the actual consequence is to be determined. I think it'll be a fine for sure. And look, if he wants to put him in for an hour, 2 hours, the day, there's a holding cell in the back of the court. He could do that. Or he could send him to Rikers Island. I highly doubt that that's going to be his first move. I think
No.
Donald Trump would have to really flagrant, keep going
Yeah.
flagrantly. That'll have to be the thing that he has no choice but doing. But they're preparing for it. There's been news reports that the Secret Service is talking to the Corrections Department about logistics if it were to happen.
They kind of have to have it all planned out because doesn't seem like he's going to stop.
Nope.
And so, at some point, I guess my worry is that he'll become this martyr. See what they're doing to the former president. They're putting him at Rikers or they're putting him in jail when really it's him over and over again trying to, as you say, put the toe over the line like he wants it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two completely separate but conflicting issues here. There's the criminal justice system, which has nothing to do with politics. It shouldn't. And
Hmm.
I was a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office for 30 years, and always prided ourselves, and the office continues to pride itself on that politics plays no part in criminal justice. It's you don't play politics with people's lives. That was a famous quote by Frank Hogan, who was a DA many, many, many years ago. And prosecutors, they bring cases without fear or favor. And so they aren't thinking about the martyr part or the politics part. They're really thinking about how the law applies to everybody and nobody's above the law. And why is it okay that the prisons are filled with Black and brown people because the law applies to them, and they're constantly getting caught up in the criminal justice system for low level crimes that people call this. They're like, why this? Why are they bringing this case? Well, why don't you say that to all the people who are incarcerated on things? Because everybody else has to play by the rules, but Donald
Yeah.
Trump doesn't seem to. And so I think that it's that what you're talking about is being a martyr, et cetera. I think the prosecutors think of that as not their lane and not their role. They have to. This is by if they didn't bring this case and they didn't enforce this gag order, but if they didn't bring this case, then it would be treating Donald Trump differently than everybody else, and that is just not right.
He's trying to get around the gag order, it would seem, by saying, okay, well, if you don't like what I'm saying, what about what I'm reposting? And the judge didn't seem to be buying what they were selling as far as this reposting argument. That he said, uh, reposted the Trump attorney said, reposting an article from a news site, we don't believe that's a violation. The judge said, well, tell me what case law you have to support that. And the attorney says, this is Blanche, says, I don't have any case laws, but it's common sense, Your Honor, that the act of reposting something is a passive act. A passive act. The judge is like, no. A passive act would be if someone makes a post and somehow it ends up on the client's account without anyone doing anything. Not that you've clicked the button and reposted it, with your own fingers, your own mind.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought when I saw that, because the judge also said to Todd Blanche, you're losing credibility with the court making these ridiculous arguments.
Right.
At first I thought this is so strange because Todd Blanche is a really good lawyer, has an excellent reputation, and how could he possibly be making these arguments and losing credibility on day 2 of the trial, right? It's just kind of didn't seem like it's something that he would do. But then I realized afterwards, you can only work with what you got, and he doesn't have very good facts, so he had to make whatever arguments he could make and vigorously represent his client. So I mean,
That's the best you can do? I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly. I mean, what else can you do? It's pretty bad. How can you make excuses for it, right?
You mentioned that, and I was going to bring that up when the judge said you're losing credibility here. And I don't know if that happened in front of a jury or not, but when the judge says something like that, what does that do to the kind of the setting and the mood of the courtroom?
It's pretty bad. I've never had a judge say that to me, and if they did, I would die, because
Mhm.
that's the only thing you have as a lawyer is your credibility. You're an
Right.
officer of the court first and foremost, and the judge has to trust you and trust what you have to say. You cannot lose credibility with the court. This was not in front of the jury. You certainly don't want to lose credibility with the jury. That could be fatal to your case. But to lose credibility with the court, that's not good. So that could not have gone over very well.
Any other details you think we should know about?
I mean, look, I think David Pecker, as the first witness was brilliant on the part of the prosecution. He really set the tone and sets the stage for the criminal conspiracy. And I think he's a really good witness. He corroborates Michael Cohen in many, many ways. I think he's going to make it so that it's going to be so consistent with what I think Michael Cohen's going to say, that you're not going to have to only rely on his credibility. And of course, Michael Cohen has been convicted for lying in the past. So that's, why you need to
Hmm.
corroborate everything he says. But I think it's just, I was just blown away at what a good witness for the prosecution David Pecker was. So,
What's next? We
well,
have, what is it, Karen McDougal coming up?
so the next witness is unclear because the prosecution, although they normally, out of courtesy, they share who their witnesses are going to be with the defense. In this particular case, they're not sharing who the next witness is because Donald Trump will then will tweet about them, and it's causing problems, right? It's causing witness intimidation issues. So
Right.
they're not telling him. So we don't know who's next. David Pecker is still on direct examination. Wednesdays are the court calendar days, so it's like a down day.
Hmm.
So there is no court today. But starting tomorrow, David Pecker is back on the stand. They're going to finish his direct examination, then comes cross examination. Now we don't know who the next witness is going to be. It could be. It could be Michael Cohen. It could be. I mean, I don't know. I really, I don't have a sense of who it's going to be.
Do we have yet a witness list for the defense?
Not that I know of. I haven't
Okay.
seen one. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, with obviously this is a trial the nation is watching. And so do you feel like it should be televised, or what are the laws in New York about having eyes and ears in the court? Because so far it's just drawings and whoever is there and the transcripts, and we're not able to peek in and really see for ourselves.
So I think the criminal justice system, I think that in both federal court and certain states like New York court really has to catch up with the times. You see that the Supreme Court of the United States will broadcast their audio. Same
Yeah.
thing with the DC, with all the circuit courts and their oral arguments. Those are broadcast. Same with the appellate court in New York. You can listen to and even watch those oral arguments. So it's just the idea that these trial courts can't be broadcast. And you see in Georgia, in Fulton County, the Scott McAfee who's overseeing the Fonnie Willis case,
Right.
prosecuting Donald Trump for that famous 11,780
Yeah.
votes. That the big
Of
case that's going
course.
on in Georgia.
Yeah.
That's all broadcast live. Every hearing, everything. He has his own Zoom room, and the world isn't falling apart, right? If anything, it's great because it allows for transparency. There's a right to the public has a First Amendment right to have access to the courts, and the press has to be in there, and it's all about a public court. And in this day and age, to not have it at least be audio broadcast, if not video, look, you can protect the jurors. You don't have to have the camera showing the jurors. You don't even
Sure.
have to show the witnesses that don't want to be shown if that's your concern. And there could be a provision for certain kinds of cases like gang cases or other cases where you're really worried about witness safety. I mean, and there is or children or, certain kinds of delicate or sensitive witnesses. I can understand why why it's hard and why they don't want it. But in this day and age, I just don't see why they don't allow it. You've got it, especially because you've got a case where you've got people in the courtroom. They're saying that certain things are happening, and then it's pretty clear. And then you read the transcript, because even the court's releasing the transcript the next day, which is good. But then you've got Donald Trump coming out in the hall in real time saying that something happened in court that didn't happen. The perfect example is he goes out and says, the judge won't let me go to my son's graduation. Well, and that's been all over the place. Every, right-wing pundit is like, hey, can you believe the judge won't let him go to his graduation? What kind of judge? The judge is biased, this and that, how terrible. The judge never said that. The judge said, I'm not ruling on that right now. That's a long ways away. Like, see how it goes. We'll decide it. He didn't say no. And so for Donald Trump to just come out and say that, and then it gets repeated like an echo chamber, I just think it's frustrating. And so if it were on video, if people could hear it for themselves, I think a lot of this misinformation would not occur.
To your point, an article just popped up on CNN today about Trump sharing details of courtroom spectacles with the supporters, as you say, outside the courtroom, right? And on Truth Social. And the article says the reality is much more subdued. So the things he's painting as, oh my God, look what's happening, that's not true. And we're not really able to put that in perspective because we can't see it.
Exactly. And so I really do think that we all need to catch up with the times, and, enough's enough with this secret cloaked, these courtrooms that we have to have like reporters running in and out, telling people things. I mean, it's just insane.
Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, you are awesome. I hope you'll come back on the show. I know Mark would love to talk to you.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to keep watching your reports. Legal AF, legal as F. And I assume you're going to keep following this throughout the Trump trial, so we'll be able to see you there, if not here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.